me. What am I doing? I'm gonna smoke on wet sand in this guy's oh yeah, that's what I needed. So I love wet sanding. Ooh, that's disgusting. I prefer wet sanding most of the time, just because it is less messy, makes a nicer finish. You know, the kinds of stuff that we all like. This is the Sub-Zero mask that I am working on. About the whole table. So for this is a 3D print, and I did first pass of sanding, and then because I want this to be pretty smooth and there's not a super ton of like really fine details, I did a coat of XTC on it, which is one of my favorite things to use on 3D prints, especially if there's not fine details. Even if there are fine details, you can still get away with using XTC 3D, especially if you are, once you get the hang of it and you can do light coats, it works even with fine details. Like for example, the finest detail on these is these, like the cut marks that go kind of crisscross across the mask. And so the XTC, you know, it's self-level, so it will fill in those details somewhat. And in this case, what I did is, after I did the XTC, I actually took one of my round files, and I just scraped where those were, filed where those were. And I used the round one because I don't want like sharp lines, to kind of make these like rounded cutouts, and I kind of sanded them back in where they were already, and then did another primer coat over top of that, and then that's what kind of a sand. This is 320 grit, so it's some tooth to it. This is also an old piece, so it's probably more like at this point it's probably more like 500 instead of 320 because of how old it is. But that's okay, because I'm just kind of, I don't want to go too heavy because I don't want to obliterate too much of the work I did on getting those lines out. There's just a little bit of print artifacts here and there that I'm trying to smooth out into the final paint. And that's when I like to do a nice wet sand like this to smooth it all out. The first two coats of primer were filler primer, which thought I had the can around here somewhere. The filler primer that we use most is the Duplicolor filler, which is really nice. Like, I think, without being too heavy. So that's our preferred filler primer, and they actually have two different ones. They have one that's a heavier filler primer and one that's a thinner filler primer. So the reason I mention that is because the first coat after the XTC, or first after the XTC, then go back and do another sand, and then I use filler primer, which is the last thing that I did, and then I'll do this wet sand, assuming there's not anything major, and then after this, depending on how it looks, I'll either do a coat of the lighter filler primer, which is really just for scratches versus really filling stuff in, and that helps get rid of like any other little tiny imperfections there might be. Like, for example, I don't know if I can find it now. I think I might have actually taken care of it. I was going to say, on one of these, when I was with the file, I accidentally like went a little sideways and put a little scratch into the finish. But I think the sanding actually got that one out. But so that's why I was saying it'll kind of depend on where this ends up when I'm done with the sanding that I'm doing. If it seems like there are any minor scratches and imperfections I want to still try and tackle, I'll use the light filler primer, and if not, I'll use the just regular Duplicolor primer before going to paint. And the other thing too, of course, is if it's smooth enough, then you can do, or if you think it's smooth enough, sometimes it's hard to tell, right? But if you think it's smooth enough, you can always just do the regular primer, which a lot of times, what I'll do is I usually have, I'm not sure what I have now, but usually I have at least a couple of different colors of primer, and that way, like this is the light gray, so I know I have a dark gray and a white, and I'll alternate the primer colors, same brand, because I don't want to have any bad reactions, but with the same brand, alternate colors, because what'll happen is, like right now, if I look at this and go like, hey, it looks pretty good, and I put another coat of gray on here, it is more likely to hide the things that I missed than to help me see them. But if I do a different color primer, and you alternate back and forth, it does a lot to help you see those things that you might miss otherwise. And so sometimes I even have like the rust colored primer, which I really like, because it's pretty contrasty with the gray. Having white and light gray and dark gray are not as contrasty when you're sanding through and like you see where things stand out. But if that's all you have, that's all you have. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with just using the same color every time. It does add a little bit of another layer of helping out, seeing where you might need to fix things. I wonder how many people have school starting this week for their kiddos. We have 3 out of 4. And that's convenient and nice. And of course, they're all different ages and grades, and so even across the ones that start on the same day, like every single school is doing things slightly differently. which is to be expected, I suppose, but does not make it easy for parents who are in multiple schools and districts. We're trying to slowly ramp up and transition the kids into getting back on their school schedule. That was not great this morning, but could have been worse. Mostly just trying to get them into the habit of getting up on time, checking their school email to see what they're supposed to do for the day. And then for right now, for the first 2 days at least, that's it. 2 of our kids start on Wednesday, and then third one starts on Friday, which is an interesting choice given that it's a 3-day weekend, but I guess it's kind of a 1 day, see where the hiccups are, and prepare for the day after the holiday. Shouldn't surprise me, I guess, but it's shocking how much is like down to the wire with getting everything ready for the new school year and the distance learning. And like I said, we're across school districts and schools, and they're kind of all in the same boat with how scrambling and last minute everything is. So like for our high schooler especially, they had told us, make sure they log in on Monday morning, and the earlier the better to kind of get into the habit, blah blah blah. We were trying to do anyway. See, like, get into their classrooms and like check everything out, and so we got up and he logged in and checked his email, and there was like 2 emails in there for like, oh, go look at this thing and go look at this thing, and so we clicked on those and checked them out. It's like, okay, we know what that's for Wednesday. We're ready on that. And then went back, and then there was like 2 more emails, and it was like, oh, okay. So clicked on that, and then that was done. Like, oh, here's another email. It's like, okay, you know what? We're just gonna be done for today, since you guys are still apparently doing a whole bunch of stuff right now. After you told us we should have been checking this already. And so it's like, okay, well, that's enough for today, because otherwise every time we hit refresh, there's going to be something new. So we'll just come back tomorrow and then try to do everything at once, whatever's in here. And yeah, and like, for our kid that starts on Friday, we don't even have like his full schedule yet. They said it's supposed to be coming. They said like that they would be contacting us sometime this week for like picking up the device for the remote learning that every student is getting. And so it's like, okay, so he's supposed to have it all ready to go, know what's going on, and prepped Friday morning, but we don't even have the device yet. We don't know when we're supposed to even be getting it, what it is, like what software is going to be on it, what we need to know so that we can help him. Yeah, there's just so much about it that is just, I mean, I get it. It's unprecedented times for everybody, but, I think pretty much everybody expected that the school year was going to start with most, if not all, distance learning, and it seems that nobody really prepared for it until just recently, which is scary and, like I said, really not surprising. And the amount of change that is still happening is also, that's the part I think that's the most surprising, is like, at the very least, if you're making these decisions now at the last second, like, stick to the decisions you do make. Because like part of it was our high schooler has an art class, and that starts on Wednesday. And originally we were supposed to be picking up, today's Monday, right? Yeah. So originally they sent out an email saying like, oh, you're between 3 and 6 on Monday, like, go to this school, wear a mask, practice social distancing, of course, and pick up the art supplies for the art class. And then we got an email on, I think it was Friday, but maybe even Saturday, saying like, oh, change of plans. Supply pickup is going to be September 8th. And it's like, okay, so you have an art class and you're going to have a week and a half of instruction with no art supplies. Okay. I'm interested to see how that's going to go. I know they can, there's an amount of like art history and technique talking about that goes into art, but I mean, just thinking back, like every art class I've had, within a day or two, you at least start doing something. So it'll be interesting to see how an art class is going to go for a week and a half with no art supplies. Fortunately, he is already pretty artistic and loves art, and so he has a bunch of art supplies. He doesn't have most of the stuff that they're giving him, but like he has pencils and markers and colored pencils and lots of, decent paper. So like if he needed to do art, he has enough supplies to do art. He does art every day already on his own. So at least like he has stuff to do art, but I'm assuming that most kids don't have kind of the standard art supplies. So I don't see them assigning anything as far as actual art projects go. So that'll be interesting. But again, it's like deciding 2 days before the pickup and 5 days before the class starts that you're not going to get the supplies for the class is kind of an interesting choice. Let's leave it at that. Also, if anybody has, we asked this last time, but if anybody has any specific ideas about things they'd like to see us doing on stream, or things that they'd like to hear us talk about or explain, or do like walkthroughs and tutorials about, let us know. We posted on our Facebook page asking that, so there's a thread where you can go and comment and leave suggestions, but you can also message us pretty much anywhere else on social media or on here or wherever else that you feel most comfortable if you want to make any suggestions. We're pretty open to what we do. We're pretty much daily practicing, most of the techniques that we do on a regular basis, so doing them on stream is usually not a problem, and we love explaining what we're doing and talking about it. So if we get feedback from you on what you'd like to see, then we'll do that. Otherwise, we'll, as specific things come up that we're doing that we maybe haven't already covered, we'll make an effort to specifically cover that. But otherwise, we're just gonna work on whatever we're working on and hang out. The only thing on this mask that needs a little bit extra work from where I am right now is the bottom of the chin, because that was the bottom of the print, and the support materials left it a little bit rougher than I would have liked otherwise. And I tried my best to fill it in. There's a couple little gaps though, so I'm gonna go back can hit that a little bit at the end. The other thing with this, I don't think I talked about this before, but this model specifically is kind of designed so that you could also use it as an actual like respirator, or I think we're all just calling them COVID masks now, right? It has a little thing on the back here. This is not the actual piece, but it has a little thing in the back so you can put a filter in here and then enclose it. So what I was gonna do is not that, because that's not what I'm making this for. Because it has that, I'm doing is I'm using some screen door mesh actually. You can't really see it. There you go. You can kind of see it. That's just a quick test. So I just left it in there when I did the primer, which is why it's all gray. But it comes out actually. So I'm going to use like some window screen mesh that I have, some leftovers from making some window screens a while ago. I save everything because you never know when you're going to need it. So yeah, so that's what's filled in the vents there, and then and then the thing will help hold that in place and make it so you can breathe through this pretty easily. Assuming it works out the way that I want it to, if the customer wants, they could always put an actual filter between the mesh and the little holder in the back, though. So it could double as both cosplay and safety mask for, well, depending on the filter. For I am gonna put a seal around the top, and I guess and one around the bottom too, because just for comfort against the face. So it should be pretty good as far as like not fogging up glasses if you were wearing them, and forcing all the breathing and air to go in and out through the filter on the front. One thing with sanding after primer, especially like if you're trying to get something smooth and you're doing layers like this, one thing, and I think this is a pretty common misconception, and it's one that I used to have too, but I learned better. What you'll see is when I'm sanding this, the base is coming through a lot. And I know for me personally, like when I first started doing stuff, what I used to always do is, I put on a layer of primer, sand it a little tiny bit, put on a layer of primer, sand a little tiny bit, and unfortunately, most of the time when you do it that way, what you're doing is you're making a really thick primer that is softer than your part, right? In general. And what you really are trying to do with this is for the filler primer specifically, but what you're really trying to do with the filler primer, right, is you're trying to level things out, which means that your goal is that you really just want the low spots filled in with the primer. You don't want primer built up on the spots that are already good, right? Of course, when you say it out loud, then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, that's kind of common sense. And so I was definitely guilty of that for a while until I learned better. Otherwise, you're just putting a layer of primer over and primer and primer and primer on top of the good spots, versus just filling in the low or bad spots. So, I mean, if you're going for, you want to get actually most of your filler primer off before you do the next coat. And what that means, though, is that so you kind of want this where your primer is just in the low spots, and then your high spots are almost back down to bare, where you started from. And it does seem counterintuitive a little bit, but what that does is that means that then when you go to do your next coat of primer, you need a lot thinner coat to kind of smooth out what's left over after that, because you've already smoothed the high points and you've smoothed it to blend in with the low points. And so your next step is just a little bit of primer to give it a nice base for your paint. So that's all smooth and even. And if you don't sand it, the other part is if you sand it enough and you put on another coat of primer, you're building the higher points up even higher. So you're actually not smoothing it out so much as just making you're making everything higher, right? So if you just do a light sand and you still have a lot of unevenness and you put a coat of filler primer on it, the low points and the high points all go up, right? I think that probably makes sense. Versus if you sand it, again, you sand it down so that mostly your high points are back where you started, and then you do another coat, your high points are basically still only at one coat of primer, which is where you want it to be before you put in your base, and then all your really low points that you're trying to fill in will have multiple layers, versus the whole thing having multiple layers. So as you can see, it's kind of hard to see because it's white and light and it's all shiny because it's wet, but you can see a lot of the base white on a lot of this here. I wonder if anybody else has the same problem as me, and when like you follow and like know so many people in the community, but like there's people that you know by their real name, and then there's the people that you know by their their Instagram handle or their their cosplay name, and then there's the people that you know both but you don't realize they're the same person. I don't know if anybody else has that problem or if that's just me. I am terrible at remembering like names and faces, and then like just in general I've always been really bad at it my whole life, and then you add in the extra layer of like everybody, most of the people that I know and like engage with on like a regular basis have two different names and faces. Well, more than two faces if we're talking about all their cosplay, but like friends with Facebook on their personal account, and we also follow each other on like Instagram or whatever, and so it's like two different personas, give or take. And sometimes it's like I know this person and I know this person, and my brain just doesn't put the two together until like even if like even if I did know at one point or knew, like a lot of times I'll be like, oh, I need to message so and so on Facebook, and their real name is shoot, or the opposite of where like I'm like, oh, I need to tag what's her name on Instagram, and her cosplay name is, and then so I have to like go and check. I'll go to their Facebook page, and sometimes that's all you need to do because a lot of us have our cosplay pages, linked on our personal pages, and vice versa. But there's a lot of people, especially that don't have their real name on their cosplay page. So going that way is definitely usually harder, even if I know the person and I'm like blanking on their name. Most of us, though, have our cosplay page on our personal page, so at least if I know somebody's real name, I can usually, if I blank out, remember, I can go and find what their cosplay page is pretty easily. But yeah, there's so many times where I'm just like, somebody the other day asked me a question about a costume they were working on, and they sent me a picture, and I was like, oh yeah, cool, and like, I answered their question, and I was like, oh man, that's kind of weird, like, I know somebody else is, I didn't say this to them, but like in my head, I was like, oh, that's cool, somebody else that I know is building the same costume. And then I went and I looked on Instagram, And I was like, oh, wait, no, that's the same person. But like, just my brain was not connecting the dots for a moment until I saw it. But at least once I, like, you know, on the bright side, at least I haven't yet, I don't think. I apologize to anybody who maybe I have, but at least I don't think I've made that mistake and, like, blanked on who somebody was in person and, like, called them the wrong thing or anything like that. Hey, buddy, what's up? You need something? Huh? You were doing what? What died? Oh, the Kindle died? You can plug it in, you know. Oh, you need help plugging it in? Okay. Give me 1 second and I'll come and help you plug it in, okay? I gotta clean my hands off before I come in there and touch stuff. Kids. It's all good. I think I'm pretty much just talking to myself anyway. Which is cool. Mostly I just say whatever's in my head that I normally am talking to myself about anyway. I just say it out loud instead. The biggest difference is that usually I'm having those conversations in my head while also listening to music on my headphones. So the only difference when I'm streaming versus sitting here by myself is that I'm not listening to music. I'm in a pretty good stopping point anyway, so I'm gonna just... And usually what I will do at this point before, because especially with wet sanding, but I mean any sanding in general, you want to make sure that you don't have, right, make sure there's no loose paint or debris before you paint, blah blah. And when you're dry sanding, sometimes that's as easy as like blowing it with like your air gun or whatever to make sure you get all the dust off. But when you're wet sanding, it's a lot easier for stuff to like get caked up in the corners and whatnot, and then and not come off as easily. And then when you paint, you have like a little like glob of like now dried sanding dust that was in the corner but still kind of damp underneath, and then your paint doesn't stick and all that good stuff. So what I'll do after this step is I'll look and see if there's anything else I want to hit a little bit harder. Like I said, I'm definitely going to do the bottom of this, which you can't even see why it's so bad. Oh, there you go. You can see it's kind of bumpy. But I'm going to hit that a little bit harder, but I think the rest of it is pretty good for the next coat of primer for moving on to the next layer. So what I'll do, though, is at this point, I'll take it and I'll, with just a little bit of dish soap, I'll clean the whole thing off. I have a and so I'll like do like a little light scrub with a soft toothbrush to make sure everything's off and it's all clean, and then let that dry, and then do the next coat of primer. So for now, I'm just gonna set this aside. I'll just leave it there for right this second while I go help my son plug this thing in, and then I'll be right back. kids. Alright, so next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little bit of work on this guy, on cleaning these up. These are the pieces from, these are the final pieces, getting there, for the Final Fantasy Elemental Gauge that we did. This is a fully completed prototype that was all hand painted. This is what the final thing is basically going to look like, except it's going to be made out of real metal by our client. We're just doing the modeling and the initial prototype. That's what I needed. On resin prints, you kind of have two choices, especially if something's flat on the back. I know a lot of people don't like printing things completely flat on the bed because a lot of times it makes it harder to get off. And also, I don't think anybody, regardless of how perfectly they have things leveled and dialed in, doesn't have this problem, but I could be wrong. But the first layer, not unlike even with an FDM print, the first layer is always a little bit squished out. Not by a lot, but especially if you have pieces that fit together like this, that can make it where they don't quite fit together right. And so in that case, I just take our trusty X-Acto, or similar, and just like I was doing on the helmet and the Ahsoka stuff, and I do this a lot. I do the scrape technique. So just go around here and shave off that little bit of extra first layer to make it nice and smooth. I think anybody with, I'm changing the subject here real quick. I think anybody with kids or dogs can relate to what with animals, pets, can relate to what I'm about to say. But there's always that moment where you're in another room and you hear a noise that sounds like somebody potentially getting hurt or something potentially getting broken. And then you just wait. And you wait for the crying or the screaming or the "Daddy, I accidentally broke this," or "Daddy, the dog knocked this over," or whatever. The reason I'm saying that is because I heard something that sounded like something or someone falling over, and I was like ear perked, listening for the screaming that I was sure was going to follow. Not the case. So I must have been wrong about what it was. It sounded like we have this like plastic folding step stool for the kids that is in the kitchen, and what the sound sounded like was the stool. It's like a folding portable step stool. What it sounded like was the step stool collapsing in finger. Now, it's possible it was something completely different than what I thought it was, or it is what I thought it was, but it was just somebody knocking it over versus falling while they were standing on it. But I was definitely expecting / dreading, hoping not, that it was going to be someone falling, followed by that momentary pause before they decide how much it hurt, or how much it didn't hurt, and how much they wanted to get attention for it. Don't get me wrong, kids get hurt, they need attention, but there's those instances where you know they aren't as hurt as they're making it out to be. Like the instances where like you see them get hurt, but they don't know that you see them, and then they're fine. And then they notice that you're seeing them, and they're like, "Oh my god, I need an amputation." They don't ever actually say that, but we do sometimes. It's so easy to become your parents. Oh my gosh. I try to only become my parents in the good ways, but I'm sure there are some bad ways sneaking in there. But things like, this hurts. Oh my gosh, do we need to amputate? No. Oh, okay. Whew. I thought it was really bad. We don't ever try to minimize their feelings as much as we can. But there are certain times, and I am bringing this up intentionally right now. So when I went in there, so earlier today, before lunchtime, our daughter fell and like got a little scrape, which is, scrapes hurt. I get it. And we took care of it, and then she was fine. And then when my son came and got me to go help him, I went in there, and my daughter was coming down the stairs, and she was halfway down the stairs, and I came in, and I walked in there, and my son was like, "Oh, Daddy, you're gonna help me with this?" And then she started crying, and she was like, "Daddy, help, I can't go down the stairs, it hurts." I was like, "How did you get halfway down the stairs? If it hurts too much to go down the stairs." So yeah, there's definitely those times where, it doesn't hurt as much as they want attention for it, and that's fine. I mean, they're kids. I went and helped her, and like went and looked at her scrape again and put some more stuff on it. And there you go, it fits. Bing. Figured I would test fit it in this one. Come on, get out of there. There we go. The other thing I'm sure a lot of parents can relate to is that sometimes your kids make noises that you aren't sure if it's crying or laughing or just some other weird random noise. It's like you hear a noise and you're like, was that a having fun? Was that a being in distress? Was it just some random thing? So you have to like listen and like, is it gonna get worse, better, change? I'm gonna go till 3 and then take a break. And I go do some 3D modeling work to get some more prints going. I think the one that's on there is getting pretty close to being done, so I want to have the next thing ready to go before I get there. We're doing some armor for somebody, and especially like a full set of armor can be challenging to scale to a body, especially when you don't have said body handy to test things on. And so one of the things I'm doing for this particular build is something that we haven't done before, something new, and we'll see how it goes. But we send everybody who we do a commission for, we send them a measurement sheet that has, you know, a bunch of measurements, and like it shows you like where to measure. But you know, there's some things with even like the most detailed measurement sheet that you can't extrapolate. Like to a certain extent you can, but like and on clothes it's a little bit easier. But when you're talking about like a full set of hard armor, there are things that are really hard to account for with just measurements, like posture and I mean, really, just there's just things that like without having a full 3D scan of somebody, you're never going to know exactly. You know, because the shape of someone's bicep, like just because you got the diameter of their bicep and the diameter of their elbow and the length of their upper arm, there's still a lot of room for variation, right? In the overall shape and size of their arm, and so what we're trying, and like I said, for you know, for most like soft parts, it's not as critical, right? I mean, it's a sleeve, right? So on a sleeve, as long as it fits over your bicep and it's the right length, it'll probably fit okay. But a piece of armor that is like a shaped piece of armor that goes over your whole arm, even if if it's like, and like in this case it's going to be like a 2-piece clamshell kind of thing, right? Like it needs to be a little bit more specific and exact to the shape of the arm if it's going to fit properly. And so what I'm doing is scaling all the armor to the person, to the measurements as best as I can. And what we used for that, for if it's like a 3D model, is we use ArmorSmith Designer, which is really great for lots of things. It's what I scaled and sized the star screen that I'm working on out of foam, and that's what the software, like the main purpose of the software is to like take Pepakura or 3D models and convert them into foam patterns. But a nice and to do that, part of the main focus of the tool is like you take those pieces and you have an avatar in the software that you put all your measurements in, or in this case, a client's measurements in, and then you scale your parts to the avatar in the software. And again, same problem that I'm talking about though is that doesn't account for things like posture and whatnot. You put in the measurements and it does its best, ability, of course, to extrapolate out what that looks like in human shape, but it's never going to be perfect to a specific person like a 3D scan of someone's body would be, or whatever. And so what I'm doing is scaling all the armor, and then for the major pieces, thigh piece, maybe calf, bicep, and then maybe forearm, and then at least like chest and back. I'll have to look and see if there's anything else I want to do, but after I scale all the pieces, I'm basically taking a slice out that is, I already did a couple, but I think I'm doing, can't remember off the top of my head, I think I did like 4 or maybe 6 millimeters, and the slice that I'm doing is at the same spot where we asked for a measurement, right? And so I'm going to print out those slices, send them to the customer to basically try on as like a quick and dirty verification of the sizing before I then go and print like the whole thing. It's the first time we're doing it this way, so we'll see how it goes. But I'd rather, print a handful of throwaway pieces and pay for shipping before I print, several spools worth of armor that ends up being garbage. Because that would be bad. And maybe this won't work out at all. I don't know. We'll see. But it just and that's the other thing, right? Is just more of the same thing. But two people's biceps can be 15-inch diameter, but completely different shape, right? And so like on a piece of armor that encompasses the whole thing, that's hard, right? Like I might go like, okay, this is 15-inch diameter, and over here, and it's like this, but their arm is actually like this, right? It's the same size, but there's a lot of variation in what that shape could be, and so I'm doing my best to tweak and shape the parts before I print them. That's part of why the mannequin in Armorsmith Designer is so helpful, because it does some of that work for you. Because it basically, when you load the software and you start a new avatar, it's average generic proportions and shapes, and then you put in the measurements, and it kind of calculates those things based on the measurements, on scaling the body parts from where it started. So at least you have, because obviously nobody's arm is a perfect circle, so that it's never going to be 15 inches in a perfect diameter, but you're going off of an approximation of an average arm shape that's been sized up based on the dimensions you put in. So in theory, it should work, and it should fit, but I am all about the let's double check and make sure before we go all the way, and spend a lot of time potentially doing something wrong, if possible, which of course has become much harder in our time of pandemic here, because normally we've done this before where we've had people come for fittings or for measurements, or even we've helped people make duct tape dummies of themselves in person, all of which we have not been able to do in many months, which doesn't make our job impossible, but it does make our job more difficult, depending on the costume, obviously. It's also harder when we are, I'm not going to say harder, but there's always, when you aren't doing the measurements yourself, there's always a little bit of anxiety, maybe, I guess, or just like an extra level of awareness of it might not be exactly the same measurement if you had taken it, especially, this isn't knocking anybody, but a lot of people have never actually had to take their own measurements before, and so even with a guide and a sheet, it's not necessarily the easiest thing in the world to get, and so you have to try to balance, like, well, these are the measurements you gave us with obviously, like, and if there's anything where there's like something that looks really out of whack, which happens every once in a while, there'll be like one measurement where it's like, I'm pretty sure this one is wrong based on everything else you gave us, and it's one of those things where I don't know, we have to ask because we want to make sure that the thing that we make for you is right, but it's always weird asking someone, really, I feel weird asking someone to like, can you like double check this measurement or explain to us exactly how you took this measurement, because it doesn't seem to work with everything else. Um, but that there might be a good reason that it doesn't seem to make sense. And like I said, a lot of times there are things where it's just like, yeah, that's the right measurement. That's just the way my body is built or whatever. And that's the part where like I always feel weird like double checking something, because I don't want people to feel like that we're saying there's something wrong with them or that they're weird or something just because something doesn't seem quite right. I don't know. Maybe I'm just overthinking it. Probably overthinking it. But yeah, so like I'll agonize for like days on how do I ask this person if this measurement is right, because it seems weird without offending them. And I'm sure, I don't know, maybe every time the person is like, oh yeah, you're right, I did that wrong or whatever, and like they have no idea that I was worried about offending them. That's the problem with all these things, even like store-bought patterns, right? There's an assumption of there's this assumption of everything being based off of like a norm or an average or whatever, which of course the whole point of the existence of that is that nobody is that normal thing. Everybody is somewhere around there, which ends up generating the average thing. So it isn't, and everyone's proportions and everything else are different from each other. Which is actually another thing too that I was actually thinking about this the other day is, and this doesn't apply just to what we do, but anything that has to do with fashion and sizing and like our sizing charts have a ton of measurements, but everything on measurement charts and clothing sizes and everything else just assumes symmetry, which is an interesting thing when you think about it, because and I, again, there's this whole thing about averaging things out, and for most clothing and costumes, um, you know, if one arm is a little bit longer than another, your shirt is still gonna fit fine, and you're not gonna notice any difference. But everything just assumes symmetry, and which is interesting because nobody is symmetrical. But even then, it assumes a level of an amount of tolerance that is kind of baked into the average measurements and symmetry. And so I was thinking about the fact that if somebody has anything that's outside of that, normal tolerance, then the measurement charts and the sizing charts that everybody uses and that we use don't apply anymore, or they don't accurately reflect. And it's especially if it's something that like a good example, none of the stuff says like ever asks or mentions like like what if you're ordering armor and you are like you're an amputee or something, and so like we would want to accommodate for that, but there's also no way in our process, and like I said, this doesn't apply just to us, but just clothing in general, um, like to really accommodate for that. And I was thinking like ways that we could accommodate for that sort of thing without necessarily like I don't want to like necessarily have to call attention to things or like make people uncomfortable. Apparently that's of my think of like a way to kind of just incorporate it into the form, um, so that if people need to specify something that is not symmetrical for any reason, they could incorporate that easily, without I guess without trying like I don't want it to seem like we're making people feel bad about something, or when there's nothing to feel bad about. But like at the very least, I was thinking like on these forms, like it has usually it's like here's the person and then here's all the measurements listed out, and at least on the ones where it's like a measurement for a side, just adding in a thing where you could basically specify if it's different between sides. Otherwise, you just leave it blank kind of thing. So it's like here's the list of all the measurements, and then if different, the other side or something like that. I don't know. Again, maybe I'm just thinking too much about this, and it's a thing that people don't care about or worry about or don't need to care about. I don't know. Like I said, when I'm on stream, I just talk about the things that go through my head and say them out loud. So some of it's just going to be some stream of consciousness, random stuff, and but yes, these are the kinds of things that I think about while I'm working. Also, I can guarantee you that I don't always go this slowly. When I'm thinking and talking out loud at the same time, it slows me down a little bit, which, isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I don't want just everything that comes into my head to come spilling out. So, trying to have some level of thinking about what's in my head and processing before I say it has to take place, which results in my hands going slower, apparently. When my brain is just thinking on its own, left to its own devices, my hands can do their own thing faster. Missed one side here, I think. Look at that, I blew right past that 3 o'clock time I said I was going to stop. Like I said, my mind just goes, and then it's like... Time during COVID is just this really weird thing where time goes fast, time goes slow, time doesn't move at all. You guys can't even see what I'm doing. I'm an idiot. You can see my face at least, right? And then an empty work table the whole time. Cool. That's how I roll. It's like a mystery. What is he working on? I can't see. Finish this piece and then be done. Since I already missed my initial stopping point, I'll at least finish the piece I'm working on, right? Right. So what I'm doing is I'm holding it up to the light because the light will help me see whether there's any really thin flashing left, like in here, that I forgot. That I can clean up. those moments where it's like, oh, cool, I'm almost done. Oh, wait, no, I totally missed this whole part, and this whole part, and, oh, and this part. I went all the way around the outside of everything, but forgot to get in between these two little pointy guys. Cool. Call that good for today. And I'm turn this off, and we'll be back tomorrow. Tomorrow, we might have a really cool thing to show you guys, depending on how some stuff goes later tonight. So we will see, and hopefully I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks for coming by. Thanks for watching. Peace.